Thank you, Madam Speaker. I speak to the motion to adopt House Resolution 1, the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. Ladies and gentlemen, and all that are watching, I would like to speak particularly, though, to the eyes of the three young girls who are watching. And I'd like to introduce you to my daughter. My daughter in this picture that was taken 44 years ago when she was 13, and we were on the mall in Washington, D.C. for the Equal Rights Amendment. I speak from that generation. I speak with the same slash that I wore in this picture, and it should be ancient history. 44 years is a long time to wait. We have made progress in that 44 years, and I am very proud of all of those women who have done so on their strength, on their tenacity, on their natural intelligence and abilities, and have moved forward. But I also know that some of the progress that we have made under the law is just progress under the law. Any one of those laws, whether it's Title IX, or may I revert back, that when I went to high school, it wasn't whether or not the teacher would have been pregnant. No woman that was married could teach high school. No woman that was married could teach high school. That was the law. And the progress that we have made under changes to laws like that, as valuable as they are, can be erased tomorrow. While I am proud to be a Virginian by choice and to be part of that legacy of the Bill of Rights and other hallmarks, I also know that we needed the 19th Amendment to get the right to vote. We are not protected under the Constitution, and we need that protection under the Constitution. Let me conclude by echoing the words of another colleague of mine, of my generation, as we have waited so long and worked so hard. We are in the right place because of that, at the right time because of that. Because of that progress that has led to the presence in this body of young women, not just a few, but 41 women in this body, because the public has accepted, as all who have gone before me, who I have worked beside, have made that statement of equality. Now, let's put it in the Constitution. Thank you.
Time is now for this body to go on record as supporting women's rights as human beings equal to men, to finally be enshrined into the United States Constitution. Equality must apply to your daughters as well as your sons. 160 million women and girls across this country are waiting and will forever be changed by what happens in this body here today. Very rarely, what we do here reverberates across the country. Very rarely, the votes we take matter to people around the nation and the world. But I want to be unequivocally clear that this is a vote of a lifetime. Never again will you be able to affect the United States Constitution and solidify and enshrine women's equality into our founding document. Your name will forever be written and remembered. The question is, what side of history do you want to fall on? So in closing, I say this. The world is watching. Your mother, your sisters, your daughters. And I want to be unequivocally clear that there is only one way to spell equality, and that is simply E-R-A. Thank you, Madam.
Shall the resolution pass? All those in favor, say aye. Actually, recorded vote. All those in favor shall indicate ayes or nays on the electronic voting board. All those in favor of the resolution, that the resolution pass, vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 59, nays 41, abstentions 0.
Ayes 59, nays 41, abstention 0. For the women of Virginia and the women of America, the resolution has finally passed.
Has been a long time coming. All of us have introduced bills on the minimum wage for over the last 10 years. Delegate Ward and I have served on Commerce and Labor in the committee, and we witnessed bill after bill after bill being killed, regardless of how the delegate fought, or regardless how their witness told heart-wrenching stories. But today is a good day, because when I knocked doors in my district last year, all I heard was people saying, increase the minimum wage, so I don't have to work 2 and 3 jobs. So I want to share this little story with you. I met a mother when I was knocking on doors. She had 3 children, 16, 8, and 4. And she had to leave 4 o'clock in the morning to work at Hardee's from 5 to 10 o'clock. Then she had to leave Hardee's and go and work at a truck stop from 11 to 3. And then she left there. From 3 to 7, she went to Pizza Hut. I asked her, who take care of your children? And she said, my 16-year-olds make sure that my 8 and 4-year are dressed and put on the school bus. And then she comes home in the afternoon. The 16-year-old gets them off the bus in the afternoon. So can you imagine how much homework those children do when the mom comes home exhausted from working 3 jobs? This is an example of the working poor. The way this bill is drafted with increments, starting first with $9 an hour. If this lady gets a job with increasing the minimum wage, at least she will make approximately $18,000 a year. And this will not kill small businesses. Because when people make more, they spend more. And this certainly would boost our economy. So nevertheless, increasing the minimum wage will help to begin to break the cycle of poverty. So Madam Speaker, when I return home after this session, I want to tell this lady that I heard her cry. We finally increased the minimum wage. So I ask y'all to support this bill.
To give an opportunity to, but now they can't because they have to drastically reduce the hours in order to be able to afford to still be competitive within the marketplace. Madam Speaker, I think this kills jobs for low entry or low skill and entry level workers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Delegate from Manassas, Delegate Carter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Carter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the concern that we've heard from the other side of the aisle about the impact that this will have on low-wage workers, but we've seen the data shows quite clearly that when minimum wages are increased, there is no job loss among low-wage workers. And even if there were, Madam Speaker, there are a lot of people that are working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They barely see their kids. They're barely keeping their heads above water. And frankly, Madam Speaker, 1 job should be enough. 1 job should be enough. You should be able to keep a roof over your head and provide for your family by working a full-time job. A full-time job. Madam Speaker, I would leave the members of this body with the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he put in place the first minimum wage in this country. He said, "No business which depends for its existence upon paying less than a living wage has any right to continue to exist." 1 job should be enough. I urge the body to engross this bill and pass it on to its 3rd reading.
Delegate from Richmond City, Delegate McQuinn.
Madam Speaker,
Delegate McQuinn.
I rise for motion.
Delegate McQuinn.
I move the pending question.
All those in favor say, of pending question, say aye. All those opposed, the pending question is called. Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstention 0.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstention 0. The bill passes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Parliamentary inquiry.
Delegate Herring, the floor.
Because this is a tax bill, I wanted to inquire how many votes will it take for the,
51.
51, for it to pass.
Shall the bill pass?
This is a very small incremental step to kind of getting rid of our plastic waste. We all have seen plastic bags in trees, on the sidewalks, clogging up our waterways, and this is a small incremental step just to begin to attack this problem, which is something that we're all going to have to deal with. I have a number of grandchildren, and I want them to have a better environment when they're coming along. Thank you.
The clerk shall destroy the roll. HB 534, shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 50, nays 49, abstention 0.
Ayes 50, nays 49, abstention 0. The bill fails. The delegate from Montgomery, Delegate Rush.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, members of the House, I'd like to talk about who this bill will affect if it goes into effect. And as many of you know, I'm very proud of my children. Madam Speaker, I've got 2 sons. Both of my sons are Virginia Tech grads, U.S. Army officers, Iraq War veterans. These are the kind of young men that you will call if you were ever in need. Those 2 young men will be made criminals on 12/31/20 overnight. They have these magazines. They have these style of firearms, and not only those 2, those are just examples of the millions of Virginians that will be affected by this bill. 40% of Virginians, Madam Speaker, own firearms. And most of the magazines you have will be over 12 rounds. I myself have several firearms in my home, and I don't have any magazines that are under 12 rounds. And so, Madam Speaker, this bill, if you've ever said to one of your constituents that I'm not for taking your gun, this bill will do that. If you've ever said I'm for the Second Amendment, this bill will infringe on it. And so, Madam Speaker, these bills, these firearms, these implements, these magazines are all in common use, and I would urge the defeat of this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of the House.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Helmer.
Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Helmer, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, this bill will affect millions of Virginians. That's true. It's going to make sure millions of Virginians in schools, in their streets, are safe from the threat of mass murder. It is time that we finally pass reasonable gun violence prevention in Virginia, and this bill does exactly that. I hope everybody will vote green to keep Virginia safe. Thank you.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 51, nays 48, abstentions 0.
Ayes 51, nays 48, abstention 0. The bill passes.
A bill to amend and reenact Section 15.2914 and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to family day homes, storage of firearms.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 54, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 54, nays 45, abstention 0. The bill passes.
Let's start with the first one. He says, what if it's a really, really close nationwide vote? Well, we haven't had a nationwide vote anywhere in our history near as close as Florida. Florida was within a few hundred. I think the closest national vote was in the tens of thousands. But let's take that extremely unlikely hypothetical and assume it happens. What it would do is every state would have a recount. And you know what? Every single state in the United States, I believe, check me if one hasn't, has had a statewide recount. We had one in Virginia for the Attorney General in 2013, and we looked at all the votes for the Attorney General in 2013, and Virginia conducted a statewide recount. Virtually every other state in the United States has done it. They're competent to do it. They've done it in the past. I believe they can do it again. And thankfully, we don't have Chads very much anymore. In fact, my bill that we just passed, the voter verifiable paper ballot, ensures we don't have Chads in Virginia. So let's move on to the delegate's second point. He says, well, big urban areas will control everything. You can take the top 50 urban areas in this country, and you only get 1/6 of the United States population. We are a population of urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas, and I believe that every voter should get equal rights under the law. His third point was about 1789. This is what the founders wanted. It's interesting that we don't even know what the popular vote was until 1824 because they didn't have the ways to count it and even publish it. We still don't know how many people voted the popular vote. Actually, many states in those early days didn't even use the popular vote. They just had their legislature do it, which the Constitution says they can do. I would say we are 230 years away from the idea that we can't determine how people vote. And lastly, I would say that if Hamilton thinks that the best considered vote of the people is a few people in a closed room, I would suggest to you that the best way to determine the vote of the people, with due respect to Alexander Hamilton, is to consult the people and let them cast their votes. I urge everyone vote for this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 51, nays 46, abstentions 0.
Ayes 51, nays 46, abstention 0. The bill passes.
Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Simon, you have the floor.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, members of the House, we can come up with these crazy hypothetical situations that almost never happen, actually never happen, right? We actually have statistics on in-person voter fraud, and it's almost zero. All right, but what we do have is people that show up on election day and they've lost their driver's license. What we do have are senior citizens who no longer have a valid driver's license and they can't vote, right? You guys are more concerned with these bizarre, strange hypotheticals that never happen than actually making sure that people that want to exercise their franchise are able to do it. You're making it more difficult for people to exercise their franchise. Young people who don't have driver's licenses, poor people who don't drive cars, People that live in nursing homes who've let their licenses expire, those are the people that we want voting. We want everyone to participate. So you can throw up a problem with any bill out there. You can come up with a crazy hypothetical that's got about a 0.0001 chance of happening and ignore the real problems that happen every election. People that walk into our voting places every day trying to vote and they can't. All we're trying to do is create one more fail-safe for those people that desperately want to cast their vote and want to do it. And so, Madam Chairman, I would hope that it'd be the pleasure of this body to engross this very important, very fine bill and pass it on to its third reading.
And other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to voter identification, signed statement in lieu of required forms of identification, penalty.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 57, nays 43, abstentions 0.
Ayes 57, nays 43, abstention 0. The bill passes.
Page 28.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 54, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 54, nays 45, abstention 0. The bill passes.
What did this beloved high school French teacher of 7 years do to warrant this decision? Madam Speaker, members of the body, he dared to stand on his deeply held convictions by informing the school administration that he could not, in good conscience, comply with its directive that he refer to a biologically female student by male pronouns. While Mr. Vlaming was willing to use the student's new preferred name and avoid referring to the student by female pronouns, choosing instead to simply avoid using pronouns, that did not satisfy the school administration, who told him that he must affirmatively use male pronouns for a female student. The administration insisted that by not using male pronouns, Mr. Vlaming violated its recently adopted school board policy to add sexual orientation and gender identity to its non-discrimination section. It's unfortunate that those who demand tolerance the loudest want to push anyone who does not conform. The West Point School Board has introduced a brand new ideology about human nature and insisted that Mr. Vlaming embrace this policy by setting aside his deeply held and constitutionally protected faith convictions.
The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Rome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to speak to the bill.
Delegate Rome, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that student in West Point, his name is James. I've met James. I introduced James at Equality Virginia's Commonwealth Gala last year, while he stood next to another young woman named Morgan. James is the young man who he is, and Morgan as the young woman who she is. Both of them do know what it's like to be singled out and stigmatized because of who they are. Both of them do know what it's like to be discriminated against in Virginia schools because of who they are. In Morgan's case, she was left out during a lockdown drill where she was not even allowed to go into a restroom or into a locker room and was left alone by herself during a lockdown drill to prepare as if it was a gunfire event within the school. And she was left with a panic attack. And what did anyone do about it? Well, we're not so sure because we didn't give great guidance in terms of how we should humanely treat a trans girl in schools. And let me tell you, in Peter's case, or in James's case as well, when I introduced Morgan and James at Equality Virginia, at the Equality Virginia Commonwealth Gala, and the entire ballroom stood up to applaud them, that was the first time in James's life that since he announced himself to be the young man who he is, that people actually applauded when they heard his name, that people actually celebrated him for who he is. And if you believe in a deity, then you have to understand that that deity made James who he is and made Morgan who she is. And if you don't, then you can just simply understand the words of St. Francis de Sales, to be who you are and to be that well. And the best version that we can be for every Morgan, for every James throughout this Commonwealth is to make sure that they never face the discrimination that they have faced in schools, and to make sure that no teacher, no person ever singles out and stigmatizes a student or any child, let alone adults. And that's why, Madam Speaker, I would simply say some members of this body might not be able to empathize with the plight of a young man like James or a young woman like Morgan, but I can. I was too afraid to be them. I was too afraid to tell anyone who I was, because that stigma and that fear is so real. You have no idea what it's like to be Morgan, or what it's like to be James. You don't know until you have lived it, until you have cried yourself to sleep over it. No child in the Commonwealth of Virginia and no person in the Commonwealth of Virginia should ever be afraid to be who they are and to be that well and to thrive in this Commonwealth because of who they are, not despite it, and not for what discriminatory politicians tell them they're supposed to be. Let's pass this bill.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 59, nays 39, abstentions 0.
Ayes 59, nays 39, abstention 0. The bill passes.
Page House Bill 1211, a bill to amend and reenact sections 46.2, 323, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to Department of Motor Vehicles, driver documents, and re-examination fees.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 57, nays 42, abstentions 0.
Ayes 57, nays 42, abstention 0. The bill passes.
Tuition, refugees, and individuals with certain special immigrant visas.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk shall close the roll.
Ayes 51, nays 48, abstentions 0.
Ayes 51, nays 48, abstention 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 11.